Hello, welcome to my channel, Math Made Easy with Laurel. I'm Laurel, and in this video we're going to talk about how we add and subtract polynomials. So we're going to get into a little bit of definition and terminology so that you'll understand when I do define things. And then we'll get into what the rules are. So this is an example of a polynomial. So it's an expression that contains terms. Terms are these things that are separated by addition and subtraction. And these terms contain two parts. They contain a number, which is called a numerical coefficient. Although usually people just call it a coefficient. But in terms of defining this is called the the literal coefficient. And you don't need to memorize the terminology. It's just that the rule for adding or subtracting polynomials is that the term has to have an identical literal coefficient. The numerical coefficient can be anything, but the literal coefficient, this letter part, has to be identical to that of another term before you can combine them through addition and subtraction. So if we were to take a look at this example, so let's not worry about that anymore. If we were to look at this example, I have four terms. Sometimes if you have an expression that has two terms, it's called a binomial. Three terms, trinomial, but they're all polynomials. So as long as there's more than one term, it's called a polynomial. In this example, we look at the literal coefficient part, so the letter part, and here we have an x squared y. This is an xy squared, looks similar, but it has to be identical exactly in terms of coefficients as well as the letters. So that's not a like term. We look at this term, x squared y, that's exactly the same. So those are called like terms. Which means we can add or subtract them. And then we look at our last term, that's not a like term. So the only thing we can do here to do our addition subtraction is to combine those two terms. Then we look at the numerical coefficient and we combine those. So we have 8 and we have plus 4. So when we combine those, we'll have 12 of these things. So 12x squared y. And then we just express the rest of our terms. And that would be our simplified result. Okay, let's just reinforce that whole idea with one more example. We're going to take a look and maybe use a different color pen and underline the terms that are like terms in the same color, just to remind you, just until you get comfortable. So I have 5a squared b. So I'm going to look to see if I have any more a squared b's. Oh, there's a squared b. So those are like terms, I can combine them. Then I will look at the literal coefficient of this term, ab. This is a term that has the same literal coefficient, so those are like terms, so I can combine those. So I have 5a squared b minus 2a squared b, so the a squared b stays there. And how many do I have? If I have 5 of them and take away 2 of them, that leaves me with 3 of them. These two terms I can combine. I have negative 3ab plus 7ab, so that gives me 4ab. And that's our simplified result. I'm going to do another example now that is going to look confusing, but it's something that you might run into, and I want you to understand what to do. And that's an expression that has some grouping symbols or brackets, and we're going to have to simplify using those. So let's take a look. So it looks intimidating and overwhelming, but we're just going to go step by step And when I'm working with expressions that have multiple brackets, I go to the innermost bracket first, which in this case is the round brackets. Then the next is the square, then the parentheses. And I look to see if I can simplify within the brackets, and if I can't, then I have to get rid of the grouping symbol by looking at what's happening outside of the grouping symbol. So in this case, I'm going to leave this alone for now. My neighbor's playing music. Hopefully you can't hear that. So in this case, I have a negative. It's like a -1. I'm subtracting this plus this, but these are not like terms, so I can't combine them. So I'm going to subtract each term individually. So I'm doing what's called distribution. I'm distributing a coefficient of -1, or I'm subtracting each term. So that becomes minus 5ab, and then I minus this term as well because it applies to both terms. So minus 3a squared b. And once I distribute that minus to each term, I drop those brackets. Now, before I look at anything else, I'm going to see if I can simplify in here. Do I have any like terms? Well, I have a squared b here, and I have a squared b here. So always simplify when you can. Just makes it easier so you're not carrying a lot of operations unnecessarily. So I'm going to do that next. So again, I'm subtracting each term. So I'm subtracting 2ab squared, or a squared b, minus a negative becomes a positive, plus 5ab. Same thing here, minus a negative becomes plus 3a squared b. And again, I'm going to look, is there anything I can simplify within before I take a look outside? And I have negative 2a squared b, I have positive 3a squared b. So I can combine those. I'm going to keep this bracket. I'm just going to change it to a round bracket. It's not necessarily to keep the parentheses now. 6, I don't have any other terms that are just single numbers, so I leave the 6. And I have negative 2 plus 3. Negative 2 plus 3 is plus 1, so plus 1a squared b. And then I have plus 5ab. Now my last step is to get rid of these brackets by distributing this negative again, and then combining our like terms as our final step. So we have 4a squared b minus a 6 minus an a squared b minus a 5ab. And I did this with a lot of minuses because that's where students make the mistake quite often. They forget to distribute it to every term. So I just wanted to reinforce that. So now our last job is to combine our like terms, which is 4a squared b and negative a squared b. So 4 minus 1, that leaves me with 3a squared b. I'm going to put my letter part next and my 6 at the end. So that would be complete. That would be the whole process in something that looked pretty ugly to begin with, but if you just take it step by step and work within, then go out, work within, simplify, go outside of that, just continue in that manner. We're still basically only combining terms that are like terms once they're free of their grouping symbol. So you can't really do much with it when there's brackets. You need to get rid of those before you can move them around freely. So that's adding and subtracting polynomials. Basically, the rule is they need to be like terms. That means the letter part of them has to be identical. And then you just combine with the number part. All right, hopefully these examples made sense. As always, go and practice them on your own. Check them, make sure that you're doing it correctly. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about multiplying polynomials. See you then.